Welcome to Civically Grown, where change makers share the roots of their leadership and the impact they're cultivating today. I'm your host, Dr. Shanice Prince. I am so excited to have Moryah Jackson, Executive Director of the Central South Carolina Habitat for Humanity. Her journey spans banking, higher education, philanthropy, and community development. Work rooted in building bridges and expanding opportunity. From childhood housing insecurity to leading a housing mission, Moryah brings strategy and heart to every space she leads. Moryah, welcome. I am so glad to have you here today.
Thank you so much. It's a pleasure to be here.
Every podcast, I start the same way. What is a song lyric or quote that describes how you've grown as a leader and why?
Oh, wonderful. I think a song lyric that captures that would be from Audra Day, I Rise Up. And there's a lot of songs, but I love that it says, I'll rise up in spite of the ache. And I think that just really demonstrates my leadership through so many obstacles and challenges. No matter what, I've continued to persevere. And I feel like my leadership has strengthened over time. So I really love that song and I really love that lyric as well.
Thank you for sharing it. And honestly, I love when I see people dancing to that song.
It's beautiful. She has a beautiful voice and it has such powerful meaning. So it's just a really good upbeat song.
I'm interested to learn more about these obstacles that you've overcome.
Yeah. So as I tell people, growing up, my parents had me when they were teenagers. And so I've just dealt with a lot of transition, a lot of moving. I was born in Hampton, Virginia, and I spent, my formative years there until I was about in sixth grade. And then I switched schools. I went to a new school in seventh grade. I went to a new school in eighth grade. I went to a new school in ninth grade. Then I went to a new school in the middle of my 10th grade year. So it was just a lot of changes and a lot of transition and moving from state to state. So I went from Virginia to Maryland and then I came to South Carolina. And I think just through all of that, it was just learning how to deal with change, learning how to be the new person in school, meet new people, adapt to different environments. And so I think that helped me become really resilient. And I didn't even know those were skill sets that I needed as I was going to enter the professional world and start, leading teams and working with people.
That's really fascinating because I know some of the background with the leadership you had as a young person, but I didn't realize that you had all those leadership experiences with so much transition. So, can you give us just a background of some of those youth leadership experiences you had, and then we'll dive into one of them?
Absolutely. So I think it's really important to talk about just home for me. And so, being born and raised in Hampton, Virginia, Hampton University played a big part in my life. I grew up in a community called Aberdeen Gardens, and it was an intentionally built community by Black people, for Black people. It's my grandparents' home. And there's so much history in that community. They have the names of famous, prominent Black people on our streets. I went to Caesar Trent Elementary School. And so it was really helpful to just ground me into history and who I was. And Virginia has so much history in that state. And I think that just really played a big role in who I am. And so even though I was navigating challenges with housing insecurity, financial insecurity, food insecurity. I had all those at risk labels. I'm a first generation college graduate, but I've always had teachers who cared about me. I've always been in communities where there were people who cared about me. And I really think that helped give me a strong sense of identity. And they also gave opportunities. So even though I was in those situations where I was considered at risk or maybe unfortunate, there were still opportunities for me to have agency. There were still opportunities for me to be involved and for me to participate. And I think that really helped me in terms of growing into who I am.
I like what you talked about agency. I feel that sometimes when people say, oh, this person's from an at risk background, they
Mhm.
feel that, oh, they can't do certain things. But
Right.
how did people build that agency in? Like, what were the ways that you saw that?
Absolutely. So again, I think it comes from teachers who really cared and helped me understand that, you can still perform at a high standard. We still have expectations for you. There are ways for you to get involved where there's not a financial barrier or a transportation barrier. I really appreciated in elementary school a lot of the programs and activities that we did. They took place during the school day. So I was in so many music programs. It's kind of interesting thinking about it. This is back in the day when Oregon Trail. I don't know if you played Oregon Trail when
Oh,
you were.
yes. I remember Oregon Trail.
Like, I was just thinking, getting prepared for this. I'm like, wow, this is a lot of memories that are, coming back. But we had computers and technology, and computer music was in, and I played the violin, and I was in student government since third grade. And so I think the fact that there were these programs that were taking place in school during the day, there weren't barriers. It was giving me opportunities that put me on the same playing field as my peers who may have had more financial support or family support than I did. So, I mean, it was normal for me. I mean, this was my life and I had the support. And so I think that made all the difference. And I'm so thankful for it. And, that's why I work to try to pay it forward as much as I can because I know there were people who poured into me. And I want to make sure I'm pouring into other people as well.
From what I see, it seems like you're doing that, and you're just such a blessing to our community, so thank you for everything you do.
Thank
When
you.
you look at those youth leadership experiences, let's talk about one that you had a very vivid memory about.
For me, student government was a big part of my life. So I was involved in student government since I was in third grade, and I did it all the way up until high school. And so I actually became class president in ninth grade and 10th grade. Unfortunately, I could not be class president in 11th grade because I wasn't a resident long enough here in South Carolina. And then I became president again in 12th grade at Ridgeview High School. So, yes, I moved from Maryland to South Carolina, and that transition kind of ruined my plans of being class president all 4 years. I am a graduate of the class of 2000. And so that was also something that was instilled in me from an early age. It's fascinating. I remember they made a big deal about us being the first graduating class of the new millennium, and, we were the future. And so all these positive affirmations were poured into us. But student government just helped me again learn about who I was as a person. It helped develop skill sets. And honestly, it wasn't until I was a little bit older that I realized everybody didn't have those experiences. So the leadership experiences that I started developing as a third grader, there's some adults in the professional field who did not have those experiences. And so that was really eye opening for me. So love student government. And when I was in Maryland, it's really interesting. There was a graduation requirement where you had to complete 75 hours of service learning in order to graduate.
Everybody had to complete 75 hours of service learning to graduate. Okay, that's
Yeah,
nice.
in Maryland. And so, fortunately, I was in Maryland from 7th grade until the middle of my 10th grade year. And Mr. Mark Howell was my ninth grade social studies teacher and phenomenal teacher. He was one of those teachers that inspired you to do more, to learn more. And he told us, he was like, hey, you all can get these hours by checking off the box and just get it done. He said, or you can be creative and you can become a leader and you can do something unique and create something on your own in your community. And of course, I took that path, but I'm very thankful for him. So in ninth grade, me with my student government friends, we created the Friend of a Child walkathon in partnership with the Children's Aid Society. And so it was just a walk where you would get pledges to walk around the track at high school to raise money for this nonprofit organization. But I led a team of my peers and we did the media plan. We did the pledge. I mean, we did all these things and it was really amazing. And it's just so vivid to me. I remember calling a local business. I hate that I don't even remember who it was right now, but they wrote us a check for $750. And
That's significant, especially at the age that you were, that you made a call and it resulted with $750.
exactly, exactly. And so that was just a very powerful moment. And we ended up raising like, a little over $1,000 or so. But it was a very powerful moment to know that, hey, even me, at this age, I can make a difference and I can help someone else. And I'm really thankful that Mr. Howell planted that seed because I think that really gave me again the ability to take the initiative to solve a problem because I knew that I could do something. I could start something, I could finish it, it could produce results. And it was just a wonderful experience. And I absolutely love that Maryland still has that requirement. So students have the opportunity, again, to still do service learning, create service learning projects on their own. And I think that really helps with civic engagement and just making you a good, well rounded person and a good neighbor.
It definitely sounds that way. One thing I have to ask though, when you came to South Carolina, the junior year when you weren't class president, but then the next year you were, how are you able to connect with enough people that you were able to win senior year? I think that's impressive.
Aw, thank you. I really
You're welcome.
appreciate it. Again, I wasn't new to being the new girl. So, I went to a different school in seventh grade. I went to a different school in eighth grade. I went to a different school in ninth grade. So I had those skill sets that I knew, when you go to school, you have to take the initiative to meet people, to talk to people, to get to know people. And so I went to school and, I got plugged in with the different organizations and I contributed where I could and I just developed those relationships. And it was really a good experience. And I will say it was really for affirming for me to be able to become class president again my senior year at a new school. So that was great.
You did it.
Yes, thank you.
How did those early leadership experiences impact how you lead today?
Absolutely. So I think those early experiences helped me become more self aware. So, student government, they did a really good job of doing like leadership assessments, taking us to different conferences, teaching us different skills. And so I think for me, it laid a really solid foundation. And so it helped me understand a little bit more because it's hard to understand people because people are people. And I love to say that people will people. But I think those early experiences help me just kind of learn how do things get done? How can you plan and adapt and how can you get people to work together? And so all the things really that I learned through my years in student government laid a strong foundation for my leadership today and their skill sets that I still rely on. So I'm very thankful for them. I will also say a key moment that I didn't talk about General Colin Powell, he started America's Promise. And so when I was in elementary school, I had an opportunity to hear from him. And it was just so inspiring to hear from someone to talk about the promise of America's youth and to talk about the way that you can make a difference. I think a lot of it was just instilling that belief that you can do something and again that you have the agency. And so I think all of that still impacts me today.
Could you tell me more about his program?
Yeah, so America's Promise was this program that was helping connect the dots between resources across different communities, again, to help young people realize that you are the future. You have a say in the future, and really helping equip them with the skill sets that they needed to make a difference. And so there were programs, from what I understand, all across the country, but him and other leaders would be involved and go out and do motivational speeches and things like that. And so it was really good that we were a part of that at my school.
It sounds like in your life, you had multiple levels of things that were really supportive, like the
Mhm.
75 hours service,
Yeah.
General Colin Powell, family. So, what do you think helped make you so resilient? Because there are a lot of students who move a lot, and sometimes they're not as resilient. So, what
Right.
do you think was the key for you?
I just feel like for me, I was just fortunate to be in this environment where there were people around me who motivated me, encouraged me, challenged me to do hard things. I think it's really good when you're building confidence to try things, to do things. Again, even as I was preparing for this, I loved your questions. I was thinking about how much the arts played in my life as well. My art teacher and my music arts teacher in elementary school, her name was Mrs. Souls, Soles. And so I always think about it as being soulful, but I think she had a perfect name to be a music teacher. But I think about the opportunity to experiment with music. She was a very supportive teacher. And so I had a chance to play the piano, I had a chance to play the violin. I was also exposed to creative writing. I was also exposed to drama, which is a little bit scary for me. I do not like the stage. I'm more of a behind the scenes person, but in elementary school, we had to do these plays, and I know I had roles in those plays. I think all of those things helped build the confidence and help build the self esteem. It was a really loving, supportive environment. And as you get older and you learn the theory behind things, or I'm a parent, I'm learning about, how children learn. It's amazing to see so many of those best practices were taking place when I was in school. We had to do show and tell, we had to go up and do speeches, things that people are typically afraid of. Those are things that we did on a regular basis. And so I just think I was in an environment where they were applying best practices, they were supportive, and they were really pouring into me as a person, as a child, and they really helped build that confidence. And that is why it's so important for me whenever I talk to young people. I'm always trying to be positive or inspiring or supportive of them because you just never know what you say. You never know how that makes a difference and how those words of affirmation or positivity make such a big impact in someone's life.
So today, how do you think we really can help our students do hard things? Because each generation's so different.
Mhm.
And now we have the advent of so many really cool technologies, but technologies that also can have people take shortcuts. So, what are your thoughts of like really encouraging students or techniques or advice of how to do those hard things?
Oh, I think that's a really good question. I have 2 sons. So my oldest son, he's about to be 21, and my youngest son is 17. And so I think from our experience, just seeing what they like and what they're good at and encouraging them or putting them in situations that may push them and helping talk them through it, I think it's really important. And I know for my family, one of the things that we did pretty early on, we started sending our boys to overnight camp when they were 10. And I know there are some people who were just like, "Oh my gosh, do you feel safe? Is that okay?" We would send them out of state to college campuses and they would go to camps. And yes, there were some nerves and they were a little bit nervous, but we told them, you'll be fine, you'll have fun. And, they did. They came back more confident, more mature, more responsible. They had a wonderful time and it encouraged them to want to do more. So I just think from the perspective of whether you're a parent or a teacher, I think it's the way in which you frame things and you really provide an opportunity to create challenge and support and let them know like, "Hey, you got this. Like it'll work out. It may be a little bit scary, but you're not the only person there and you'll learn something and you'll have fun with it." And so I know for us that's made a difference and I wish more young people would have opportunities and experiences like that. I just think it's good to figure out, okay, what is this student interested in? What do they like? Try to find something that's connected and then just try to encourage them to step out of their comfort zone and support them while they're doing it. And for me, I love reflection. I think it's so important after anything is done to take the opportunity to reflect on that experience. What did you learn? What were some challenges? How did you overcome that challenge? And I think that's a really useful tool for them. And they'll find out, like, hey, I did that, or I can do this. It was great.
I think this reflection piece is very helpful because our world is so fast paced, scrolling one video to the next, fast paced, fast paced. And so just reminding people to take time to reflect, especially young people.
Yes. It's so important to pause, it's so important to slow down, and even reflection, it doesn't have to be that long. Even if you take 10 minutes, that makes a big difference because it will help you just process, what happened while it's fresh in your memory. So, it definitely takes discipline, but I really believe that's where growth occurs when you just take that opportunity to pause and ask a few questions so you can process.
Good advice. So I want you to think about your career.
Mhm.
All leaders, we have challenges. What's
Mhm.
an example where you've had a challenge and how did you overcome it?
I think what I want to talk about from a broad level is the challenges of being a Black female leader and expectations that people may press upon you. I am so thankful that I went to a women's college and I decided to go to Columbia College here in Columbia, South Carolina because of their Leadership Institute. So, from the time that I entered as a freshman until I graduated as a senior, I had the opportunity to hear from amazing leaders from all walks of life. And so they really emphasize connecting that theory to practice. And people shared stories, or I had a chance to read books or read articles about things I hadn't encountered yet. But I'm so thankful that it planted the seed because when I came up against something in my career, I was like, oh, that's what this person was telling me about, or oh, that's why we read this book. And so I think for me, I've really had to understand I need to do what I can do to be the best that I can be. Invest in myself personally. A lot of times people don't have opportunities for professional development through their employer, but that's why it's important for you to invest in yourself. I'm a huge avid book reader. I think it's so important for you to learn in your free time. And I just really feel like it's so key for you to have that level of competence. So when somebody does question you or somebody does think you're in a position that you should not be in, you're prepared, you're ready, you have that skill set, and you just have to learn how to navigate that situation.
You do such a good job with really sharing information on your social platforms and just being a constant encouragement and giving information. I do want to follow up about the books. How do you
Mhm.
decide what you want to read? Because there's just so many good things to read out there.
Oh, goodness, yes. I always say so many books, so little time. I do a blend of like classics. I also like to keep up with contemporary, what's coming out just to stay on top of the times. Of course, I love a lot of leadership books. I think people will be surprised to know that I like science fiction and I also love memoirs. I feel like it's really important to learn from other people's experiences. So for me, at any given time, I'm probably reading multiple books at one time. And it's a combination of, okay, what are some classics that I need to read that I haven't read? What are some good books that people have recommended? What are some of the new things that are coming out from my favorite authors? And so I just struggle because I would love to read all the time. But I also think it's important to, I don't read just for the sake of reading. I think it's so important to be able to apply what you read. So I'm also trying to see, okay, how do I apply what I've learned? I know there are a lot of people who are avid readers, but then they don't apply what they've read. Then I also know there are people that read and they just keep that information to themselves. I really
Mhm.
love to try to find a way to recommend books to people. So if I'm talking to someone and they're navigating something and there's a book that I'm aware of, I'm like, hey, have you thought about reading this? It helped me do X, Y, and Z. So I think that's really important as well. And I also love to read for leisure. People are like, how do you find the time? I make the time and I will say I'm a little bit boring. I don't watch TV. I'm not doing Netflix every now and then, if my husband's watching something, but I'm more of a I need to read to decompress. I need to read when I'm stressed. I need to read to recharge. So I just keep my books with me.
You said that you read to apply it. So what
Mhm.
does that look like to read to apply?
I'm reading something, I'm looking for those nuggets. Okay, what can I do to improve my leadership? What can I do to improve my workplace or my community? Is there a piece of information here that's going to help me do something, more efficiently, more thoughtfully? And how can I actually take that and apply it? And so I'll read something and then I'll try it out. If somebody's like, hey, maybe you should try to do something like X, Y, and Z, I'm like, okay, let me go and try this out in the real world. And, sometimes things work, sometimes they don't, but I'm always thoughtful in, okay, what can I do and how can I take this that I learned and actually apply it and change my behavior, change something that we're doing structurally or from a process perspective.
We talked about a challenge, but when's the time when you knew that your leadership made a real difference?
Oh, that's such a good one. So I was really fortunate in the midst of the pandemic to change careers. So I transitioned from higher education over to banking, and I was working at United Community Bank, and I had the opportunity to launch the bank's $10 million foundation and do more in terms of community engagement and their leadership development program. And it was like, okay, I've been in higher education, I've worked for state agencies, I've done some consulting, going over to banking and corporate was very different. And it was a little nerve wracking at first to make the transition because, the business and corporate environment is very different.
Mhm.
It was a high level position. I was covering 6 states across the Southeast. So it wasn't just everyone's located in one place. And I'm just really thankful. I had a solid foundation from what I've learned through my career, what I learned at Columbia College, what I learned again in student government. And I was so fortunate to be able to help lead the bank through a process to create a framework for their foundation requests. That framework is still in place. I also launched the Banks Together for Good Council, which 6 states, people from all across the footprint are going out and focusing on community engagement. It was a really powerful moment for me because people came together, we had a plan, we executed the plan, and it's wonderful to see that even though I'm no longer at the organization, the programs are still going on. And so for me, that's the true testament. What is the legacy that you leave? And so many of my colleagues there have become friends. And so just to hear the impact that I made on their life, to hear the difference that they're making in communities across those 6 states, it was very affirming and it was a wonderful opportunity. And so, again, 5 years later, transitioning from corporate banking over to a nonprofit organization, my first time being an executive director. And so, again, it's like, okay, how's this working out? There are things we're navigating. But again, almost 10 months in, it's really affirming to see that, okay, what I have done and what I'm applying here is also working as well.
I love what you said, the legacy. It's sustainable and it keeps
Right,
going when you leave.
right.
You know that you did a good job setting it up. So that's very exciting. And to know that it's helping more and more people. It didn't
Mhm.
just stop. You said 6 states. And then
Right.
what you're doing now. It'd be exciting to see the direction that you're going in. I mean, since you've been in the position less than a year, what's
Mhm.
something that you're proud of already?
Oh, that's such a good question. I feel like I've been running so fast. I haven't had a moment to pause and think about that. I love focusing on systems. How do we create systems? And so I've really been intentional about focusing on board governance and strengthening our board and creating systems so that we can help become sustainable and grow. Another piece is I can't do anything alone. I really love if you want to go fast, go alone. If you want to go far, you go together. And so working on creating a culture of well-being and building the team is really meaningful for me. And so I love that I'm working on creating that culture here of learning and development and continuous growth. So, one of the things that we're doing is a quarterly book club. So, we're reading books together to talk about those books, to reflect, to see how we can apply things at our organization. And so that's been really wonderful. And then also focusing on implementing a strengths based approach. Like, I love Gallup, I love StrengthsFinder, and so everyone on the team has taken the strengths finder to figure out what are they good at and how can we work together. And then the last piece is just creating that culture of well-being. How do you have well-being at work? And so I'm really, really, really proud of that also.
I love all those pieces. It doesn't surprise me that you're doing the book club, and it makes sense because you said you like to suggest things, and then everybody can be in the same type of ways of how they're seeing it. And then with the Gallup, I'm actually a certified Gallup strengths coach. I love the approach that you're taking. What's one of your talent themes? One of your strengths?
Yeah, so I love StrengthsFinder, and one of my strengths is strategic. And I definitely lead from a big picture. How are we going to accomplish this? And I love to begin with the end in mind, and then work backwards from that.
Okay, I have strategic as my number 6, and I have
Ooh.
positivity as 5. So I consider myself a strategic optimist.
Oh, I like that. I definitely see that in you. That's awesome.
Thank you. What advice would you give to leaders in your same life stage and for young leaders?
Oh, that's a really good question. I'm a professional. I wear all these different hats, have family, and I would not always put myself first. And
Mm.
so I really admired people that would just take care of themselves as well. And so I've come to the point, and I've said this for a while. I believe you can have it all. You can't have it all at the same time. And I'm realizing at this point in my life, if I want to lead with agility, I also have to make sure that physically I'm able. And so I would really tell people that are at, my stage of leadership, focus on rest, focus on recovery, focus on healthy eating, focus on moving your body, focus on taking care of yourself. And I'm so proud, so excited. This year, there are a few things that I did that really have been on my bucket list for a while. One, my husband and I, we visited all of the South Carolina state parks. And so we became South Carolina Ultimate Outsiders. So that was pretty fun to just go out and get restored. Um, I ran my first 5K. I am not a runner. I'm trying to tell myself I'm a runner, but I ran my first 5K at Riverbank Zoo and was thrilled about that.
That
So
is exciting. And you can tell yourself, I have completed a 5K. Boom.
right, exactly. Like again, that mindset. And then I've also started strength training. I've been avoiding it for a while, and so I've been consistently working out and doing strength training, and I really feel the difference. I really do believe in that mind and body connection, and so I think that's really important for anyone, kind of at the same stage of leadership as I am.
So I love what you said because health is wealth. We need it to keep going. You have all the dimensions with rest and also movement and eating. And it's
Mhm.
okay to say no to some things. When you talked about you don't have to do it all right now. I look at it as we have different seasons of life. And
Yes.
so this season, I'm working on this or this. But for me, especially women in their 40s, strength training is so imperative.
Yes.
I I don't know if people realize that or not. It helps with our core, with our posture to be able to pick up things. There's people I know that they hurt themselves picking something up. But if
Mhm.
you do strength training, that helps with that. That just helps you be a more stabilized person. So I'm so glad to hear you're doing that.
I love your excitement, and so I'll share this as well. I've told my husband as I've been working out in the gym, whether I'm picking up a case of water or I'm just picking up and carrying and moving things, I'm like, "Oh, that felt lighter." I said, "This is my strength training benefiting me out in the wild." And so it's really good, to know that I'm developing and I'm getting stronger over time, and it's been great.
I'm glad you could identify those wins because it helps with mobility.
Yeah.
And when you think of aging, the biggest issue for people who are older is
Mhm.
falling. And it's
Yeah.
falling because they don't have stability and they don't have core strength. So
Yeah.
what you're doing now is going to help you now, obviously, but decades later. So you keep it up. You go.
You. I'm gonna try. I'm gonna try. That's my goal. No, I should not say I'm gonna try. I am going to keep it up because discipline beats motivation. So we're sticking to it.
That's so true.
Mhm.
I like to couple things together too. So when I do my training with my weights and such, I'll listen to an audiobook while I'm doing my weight training. That's been very helpful.
I love that. I wish I could listen to audiobooks. I am such a bibliophile. I've tried to listen to the audiobooks and it drives me crazy because I want to highlight something or I want to touch the page. So I love that you can listen to audiobooks and work out.
So now you're going to say about emerging leaders.
Yeah, so I would say for emerging leaders, learn how to get things done. It is so important. A lot of people are good at coming up with ideas or talking about something, but a lot of people don't know how to get things done. And so I think for young people, just figuring out, okay, what do I need to do to make sure I'm able to follow up? What do I need to do to make sure that I'm able to complete tasks? I think that's critically important. And also just learning from the people around you, taking time to schedule coffee or lunch or dinner with people because when you're young, people want to pour into you. You're not considered competition, so they want to help you. But I tell young people, I'm like, after you get to a certain age, you become competition, and people are not going to pour into you as much, or they're going to expect that because you have a certain number of years of experience. So I think it's so important just to learn how to get things done, to build relationships with people, and just to continue learning. You don't have to have formal education, but if you're able to read or listen to audiobooks or listen to podcasts or there's so many different courses that you can take online that don't necessarily lead to a credential, but just learning how to do things is really helpful as well, and it compounds over time and it'll just make you better.
Okay, great advice. I'm about to ask the last question, but before I do that, is there anything else you want to add?
I love sharing resources with people. And so for me, the Center for Creative Leadership is a great resource. There are articles, there are books, there's so many materials. And so I would just encourage people that are interested in improving as a leader, use those resources. They have been a game changer for me. It was part of the curriculum that was used at Columbia College. And so I've been using those materials since I was 18 years old. And I love to pass that on because they are really research based. I feel like that they're very practical as well.
Can you say the name of the organization again?
Yeah, so the Center for Creative Leadership, they are based in Greensboro, North Carolina.
Thank you so much. So we have the last question that I ask every guest. If your leadership style were a tree, plant, or flower, what type would it be and why?
That's such a fun question. I would go with wildflowers. I love that wildflowers are vibrant, but they bloom where they are. They're not controlled, they're not contained, they're very resilient in terms of my leadership style. I work to be authentic, I work to grow in the environment that I'm planted. And I hope I'm bringing joy and happiness and inspiration to the people around me. So I absolutely like the idea of comparing my leadership to wildflowers.
I love that you picked wildflowers and the reasons. Thank you so much for your insights and your time. I really appreciate you being on Civically Grown.
Oh, it was a pleasure. I enjoyed our conversation as well. Thank you so much for you doing. Thank you for your leadership also.
Thank you for listening to Civically Grown. Remember to like, subscribe, and share. Until next time, stay grounded and keep growing.